Thank you for watching Faith in Flagler, because building faith strengthens our community. My name is Brian McMillan. I'm the host. I'm also the publisher of the Ormond Beach Observer and the Palm Coast Observer. I have as a guest with me today Asher Farkash, who is the assistant rabbi and program director at the Chabad of Greater Daytona. Thank you so much, Asher, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Very good. So typically, as the name of the channel suggests, Faith in Flagler, but we're going to share this with the readers in Ormond Beach as well, and it's important what we're talking about because of the timing of the holy days, and I wanted to make sure to talk to you and to share this with readers in both communities. So kind of a special guest on Faith in Flagler, and again, thank you for doing that. I just want to mention real quick 3 sponsors who are helping to make this, who are supporting the show: Douglas Property and Development, Big John's Appliances, and Stevenson Wilcox and Associates. They were very kind to support the show and to be, promoters of, again, building the community through increasing our faith. So Asher Farkash, can you tell me what exactly are the holy days, and how are you and your synagogue celebrating the holy days?
So the holy days actually begin with Rosh Hashanah, which is going to be Saturday this year. So that falls out on the 16th, and on Sunday the 17th. Rosh Hashanah is the new year, the beginning of the year. From the Bible, God created the world in 6 days. Rosh Hashanah is actually the 6th day of creation. So today, we're actually talking today on September 11th. Today, according to the Bible, is actually the first day of creation. That happened 5 days before Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was the 6th day of creation. That's when God created Adam and Eve.
So Rosh Hashanah is the sort of signifies the end of the creation, like the completion of the creation, and therefore the new year.
So it actually interesting, but it signifies the new year because it's when the purpose for creation became possible. And that's really what's really empowering about Rosh Hashanah is that we don't celebrate the first day of creation. We celebrate the creation of man, because ultimately God created the world, but it's our mission, us, the human race. We really bring the goal and the purpose of creation into fruition. And so that really all began on the 6th day of creation when God created man.
Very good. So that's or is that what you just call the holy days?
So that is the beginning of them. So that's called Rosh Hashanah. That's the new year. A week later, 10 days later, we have the holiday of Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. So that tracks back to when the Jews Exodus, when the Jews left Egypt and they were in the desert and they received the tablets. So 39 days later was the sin of the golden calf. You open the Bible, you read the story. Mm-hmm. So Moses goes back up the mountain to ask God for forgiveness. And he comes down with God's forgiveness on the second tablets on the day of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So that became for history now, the Day of Atonement, where God says, back then was let's call it the anniversary, or when it actually happened for the first time. And now for every year following, this is a special day where God gives us a blank page, a new beginning, a chance to start again. And so that's Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
And 10 days. The anniversary of it is when the children of Israel basically were forgiven for their sin of worshiping the golden calf at the base of Mount Sinai.
Right, exactly.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that's number 2. What else do you have on the holy day?
Then 4 days later, we have the holiday of Sukkot, which is known as the holiday of huts. We spend a week in huts. Again, that's commemorating again in the desert. When God took us throughout the desert, we were protected by God's clouds of glory. And so we go out into huts, and that's also a very powerful holiday. Again, demonstrating that we live in a very shaky world. Nothing's certain. I mean, coming from COVID a few years back, we know nothing's for certain. And so we go out into the huts and we say, we might have these big houses and these structures and these businesses and this security, but ultimately we know that our true security is in the hands of God. And so we step out into the wilderness, so to speak, in a hut, and you say, God, you're my roof and you're my walls and you're my protection.
So can you tell me what these huts actually look like? I mean, are they tents or what are they made of?
So they can be really made out of anything, but it's just not a permanent structure. It has like a bamboo. The roof has to be made out of like bamboo or leaves.
Okay.
Yeah, you can Google them. They come in all different shapes and sizes. I mean, they've gotten pretty creative. People build them in the back of pickup trucks, on the back of bicycles, and they're huts. And the idea is to get as many people involved in the holiday. Of course, there's the traditions and the foods that we eat and stuff like that, but ultimately it's the message of the holiday that we have to take to heart, and that's each holiday its message and its inspiration.
So you're planning to sleep in a hut?
I'm not going to sleep in it, but we do everything else in it. Some communities do sleep in the huts,
Yeah.
but we do everything else in there. So eating and reading, and we hang out, and whatever you normally do in your house, you would do in the huts, except for sleeping.
So what is
Again,
it?
other communities do sleep in the huts.
So what is it like? What are those moments like in the huts? I mean, sometimes you're probably kind of forgetting that you're even there. You're just going about your daily life in a sense. But I'm sure there's many reminders throughout the day that, we would normally be in the air conditioning and now we're not, right? So what is it like to have that those constant reminders?
So it's beautiful. That's the idea. So we'll only eat or drink in the hut. So like if we're in the house and we need a drink, we'll take the drink into the hut and we'll drink it in the hut. But it's that constant reminder, and it's like, think of it as a 1 week seminar of remember that ultimately you're in God's hands. And after spending like a week boot camp of that constant reminder, that's supposed to take you out again. Like all the holidays, the messages are not just for that specific time. This is a concentrated time where you're supposed to take this message for the entire year. Mm-hmm. So we got 7 days full, seminar on letting go and being in God's hand, and that's supposed to take you out throughout the entire year.
Are these huts? Are the roofs typically pretty waterproof, or do you notice when it rains?
Oh, they're not waterproof at all. They're bamboo mats.
You got to work on that. I mean, they can be waterproof if you put a little bit.
Actually, the whole idea is that you should be able to see through them into the stars, and the rain should be able to fall through. We're opening ourselves up to the elements to really say, we're in God's hands. So it can rain and it can snow. I mean, it's not in Florida, but
so is it allowed? Is it allowed to have an umbrella in the hut?
So no, you're actually supposed to be covered with the roof of the hut. You're not supposed to have an umbrella, not a covering.
So in the past, have you been out there eating and it rains? And
100%. That's all part of it.
What is that like? I mean, when it rains, that's kind of like the exact in a way that's like the most powerful kind of reminder. If it's just kind of shady and you're out having breakfast under the hut, but the sacrifice and the reminder when it rains is probably more dramatic.
100%. So actually, by Jewish law, if it's raining, you can go into the house. You don't have to sit in the rain. But we at Chabad, our custom is rain or shine. We're in that hut.
Those Jewish laws, they're so lenient, right? Isn't that what
sometimes lenient, sometimes they're strict, but something we like it when it rains. It's like the kids get all excited. It's like now we have the ability to really, like you said, to really get involved.
We're jumping in the spiritual puddles.
Exactly.
Very cool. Okay, so to remind me, so Rosh Hashanah, and that's followed by.
I'll give you all the dates right now. So I have my calendar here. So Rosh Hashanah is the 15th, and this starts the 15th at night.
Okay.
It's the 16th and the 17th.
Okay, so it ends at night on the 17th.
Ends at night on the 17th, Sunday night, and then Yom Kippur starts Sunday the 24th.
Okay.
And it goes till the end of the 25th. That's a day of atonement. We spend the whole day in synagogue, fasting. We don't eat anything that day, just synagogue and praying. Then the holiday of Sukkot starts on Friday, the 29th. And it goes for a full week, all the way until, it follows right into another holiday, which is Simchat Torah, which I'll explain to you in a second, but that goes all the way till basically the 8th of October.
Okay. And then the fourth of the holy days, holy day celebrations is what did you say it was
So
called?
it's called Simchat Torah, which is the joy of the Torah, and that's celebrating basically Moses coming down with the second tablets. So there was the first tablets, which were broken after the sin. And then Moses comes down with the second tablets, and God forgave us. So we conclude the high holidays with celebrating the Torah. That's a 2-day holiday and ends on the 8th.
Very good. And what do you do to celebrate the Torah?
So that's a very, very wonderful question. So the way we celebrate is, as you would imagine, any celebration. We actually take this Torah scrolls and we dance with them.
Really?
We dance and we sing and we celebrate, and it's ultimately commemorating the idea behind the holiday. Is you would think, you want to commemorate Torah, the best way to do it is to open up the Torah and study it, right?
Yeah, right.
The book of law. So let's study the law, but we don't do that. We actually dance with it because ultimately our connection with God is that deep. It's not about how much you know, it's about how much you're involved. It's about being connected. And so maybe not everyone can read and not everyone can understand, but everyone can dance. And so we grab the Torah, we hug it, we embrace it, and we dance with it.
That is a beautiful thought. So when it also kind of is a reminder that, this is a joyful thing. Like this relationship with God is supposed to bring you joy.
100%.
Yeah, that's not how people see religion a lot of times these days.
Right. They say that
like,
there's a famous quote that, if you want the generations to follow to be involved in religion, then we got to take the oi out of it and bring in the joy.
Very good. So that kind of leads me to another question. One of the things that I always associate with Judaism is this reverence for the past and telling those stories. That's what the holidays do, the holy days do. And I remember reading in the Torah, I read the King James Bible, but reading those first 5 books of Moses, God commands the children of Israel to teach their children about this deliverance. And I just wondered, why is that so important that we continue to teach our children about those ancient events?
It's a beautiful question. So, as a matter of fact, the Jewish belief is, as much as we focus on the past, we learn about the past to see how we should better our future. But in the Torah, we actually believe that it's not just something that happened in the past, but it's something that happens on a constant basis. History repeats itself. God didn't give the Torah 3,300 and something years ago, but every day God is giving the Torah again. God didn't just create the world 5,784 years ago, but God on a constant basis is recreating the world. At every moment, God's creating the world. So, we commemorate these things and we learn about them and we live them because it's not something of the past. It's the past, it's the present, it's also the future. And so by celebrating these things and learning about them, we see how it was and we know how it is and how it should be for the future.
So in my window in my kitchen, I have some strawberry plants that are always in danger of dying because we have a track record. Okay. But there's these strawberry plants that we bought them from a young lady in our church. She's trying to earn some money, so she's selling strawberry plants. And as it's kind of exciting, especially for the kids to see a sprout grow and to see the leaves get bigger. But from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, it seems like I should be seeing that as the creation is ongoing. It's still happening. There's a plant that is growing out of soil. Is that any less miraculous than the creation? It's still a seed turning into something, bigger from what? From sunlight? Science has its own way to explain these things, but the creation is ongoing. That's a really beautiful thought.
Right. And even science, the fact that science works the way it works, that's just telling us how it happened.
Yeah.
But, God is the one that makes it all work. God is the creator of science.
Exactly. So if somebody wanted to participate, is it Is it something where, the Chabad is sort of wanting the Jewish community to come, or is it open to somebody else? Like if I wanted to go and check it out and see what it's like and build my own faith in God, what could I come and do it, or could
So
somebody participate with you?
That's a great question. So we're open to the public. It's a synagogue. It's open whenever services are happening. People come in all the time to learn, to listen. It's not just the God of the Jews. We believe God is the God of everybody. And so, we have events and programs, and, everyone's welcome to just swing by and learn and grow.
Excellent. Can I ask a personal question? So
Sure.
How did you develop your own faith in God? I mean, did you grow up in this? And even if you did, because I grew up in my church, but I still had to have a time where I had to decide, now I'm 43, like my parents aren't telling me what to do anymore. When did you develop your own faith? And can you think of an experience or two that helped shape who you are and what your faith means to you now?
So that's a beautiful question. I'm going to actually take it back a little bit. There's actually one of the great Jewish philosophers, and he says the following. He brings it off a quote from the Bible, but his message is as follows. And he says that if God is the God of your father, then you don't really have a connection with God. God has to be yours, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, my parents were religious, and so I grew up religious. Yeah, but you don't really have your own connection with God now. You have to make it your own. So yes, I was brought up this way. My parents were religious, observant. I grew up in a very, very Jewish community in Brooklyn, New York. But ultimately, it's about us creating our own relationship. I'm not sure that I can pinpoint one specific moment. Like everybody, we all have we wrestle with faith, and that's part of being a believer. Mm-hmm. But I've had many good teachers along the way. Everyone has that one teacher. So I've had many good teachers. I could attribute my passion for faith, but ultimately I'm going to bring it back to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, who's the leader of the Chabad movement. He is our inspiration till this very day, although he passed in 1994. His message and his marching orders is what's keeping Chabad International moving and alive till today.
You realize I'm never going to be able to do the auto captions with this interview.
Okay.
There's too many things I can't correct on the spelling, but I'll do my best. Okay. So how about talk about something practical? Let's talk about prayer. What can you, the devotion that you have is very evident, you can tell. So what does prayer mean to you, and how can just any person anywhere, how can we make our prayers more meaningful and feel more connected to God?
That's a beautiful question. So prayer has a few functions. I think that's something that people need to clarify on the onset, and that prayer isn't just about asking God for our needs. We don't only pray to God when we need something. And prayer isn't just saying thank you. I mean, in Judaism, we pray 3 times a day, every day of the week. Saturday, we pray 4 times a day. And on the holiday of Yom Kippur, we pray 5 times on that day. So that's a lot of times to ask for your needs, a lot of times to say thank you, So we actually understand prayer to be also that. We also ask God for our needs. We also are saying thank you. But really, prayer is about making a connection. It's about checking in. Like, how many times a day do you speak to your spouse? Mm-hmm. Multiple times a day. That's the relationship, right? That our relationship is one of dialect. I speak to my spouse, she speaks back to me, and that's how we connect. We bond through chatting. I call my friends call me, and that's really the relationship that we have to have with God. We check in with God. This is how we're doing. This is what we're looking for. This is how my day went. It's not just about can I have or thank you. It's about, hey, I wanted to let you know my child started walking today. I want to let you know business is going great. We have to develop that friendly father-son relationship with God. I call my dad to say, hey, your grandchild said their first word. So why can't I tell that to God? So that's really the relationship that should be happening during prayer.
It's interesting. It's almost like it would be a good thought experiment. Like every time you talk to your friend or your wife or to somebody, maybe I should ask myself, why didn't I tell God that first?
Exactly.
You can tell them all at once, I guess, but very interesting. Okay, how about reading the Bible? So you keep referring to it as the Bible. I always assume that, for the Jews, you think of it as the Torah, but you look at what's the difference between the Bible and the Torah? I guess it's pretty simple question. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Right. So when we translate it as the Bible. It ultimately is the Torah. Yeah. The Hebrew word is the Torah. And yeah.
Obviously Christians believe in the New Testament, but what books in, say, the King James Bible or the normal canonized Bible that Christians use are all the Old Testament books, what we would call the Old Testament? Do you read all those books also, or are there different ones is there a difference?
I believe so. So we have the 5 books of Moses and we have the scriptures and the prophets.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a total of 24 books.
Okay.
That is encompassed in the Torah. Yeah.
So the Psalms.
Yes, by King David.
Yeah, very good. How do you get the most meaning out of studying the Torah, studying the Bible? Do you have certain methods or certain habits, routines that you go through to, I'm sure you can just read it and say, okay, check, I did that today. But how do you get beyond that personally?
So yeah, we do have a system where we go through the 5 books of Moses every year.
Okay.
Because if you open up the Torah, you'll see that the Torah is split into Torah portions. Every week has a portion, and every portion is split up into 7. And so every day we read one section of the portion. And so throughout the whole year, you finish the whole Torah, 5 books of Moses. And each week in the synagogue, we actually read that week's Torah portion. And so in the synagogue itself, we end up reading through all 5 books of Moses. But that's just reading, right? When it comes to Torah study, that's more than just the reading. I mean, we have the commentary that we look into. And ultimately, Hasidic philosophy, right? Chabad philosophy is all about applying everything. Again, it's not something that happened 5,000 years ago. It's happening today. So when I read about, God created the world in 6 days, what does that say to me in 2023? God split the sea. What does that say to me? And that's really the goal, is to always figure out, like, how does that apply to me today? And so for that, we look at, we look at the text and we look at the commentary and we see what we can glean. Ultimately, you got to walk away. It has to be talking to you today. It can't be something of the past.
God split the sea. What does that mean to you in 2023?
Beautiful. Great question. So God split the sea. What does that mean to me in 2023? So Hasidic philosophy teaches us that the sea, what's interesting about the sea as opposed to land, is that the creatures of the sea, they live in their life source. You can't take a fish out of the water. It won't live. That represents a reality where one is in tune with godliness. They're so aware of godliness that they know that if I disconnect from my life source, I'm gone. As opposed to creatures on land, we can go a few hours without eating. We walk around. We don't feel that we're constantly in need of air. We feel like I can run my own show. That shows a reality where we feel disconnected from God. The splitting of the sea is where God opens the sea and lets us walk through it. Once again, giving us here on land the ability to infuse ourselves with the sea reality, where we come to realize that really we cannot step out of the ocean. We can't step out of God. If we do, we won't survive. And so the splitting of the sea, when God takes the Jews out of Exodus and he's bringing them into the Holy Land, he says, you're about to go into a world where, you're going to get busy with business and finances and agriculture and building and all that stuff. Before you go there, let me open the sea for you and realize, even though when you're there, you might be able to think, oh, look, I have a good business. I can do this by my own. No. You're like a fish in the ocean. You got to always stay connected. So that's the message there.
I never thought about the because it was a long walk, right? I'm not sure how long exactly it was through the sea, but I never really thought about the fact that as the Jews are walking through on dry ground and you're surrounded by these walls of water, that is a great time for meditation.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot that people could have learned while they're walking through there and seeing that. I'm going to read a verse from Deuteronomy 31:6. It says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." So I was wondering if you can tell me, how does God go with us today?
I'm going to share with you a story, actually, if that's okay.
I would expect nothing less from a rabbi. So thank you.
So they say this story, this individual, he has a dream, and in his dream, he's at the beach. And as he's walking at the beach, he sees two sets of footprints along the sand.
Mhm.
And he's looking and he's watching, and he sees that this is actually the story of his life. And in his dream, he turns to God and he says, "Whose footprints are these?" And God says, "Well, one set of footprints are yours, and one set of footprints are mine. Throughout life, I was constantly walking with you."
Mhm.
And he continues walking down the beach, through his life, memory lane. And it comes to one point where he's like, hey, he realizes the most difficult parts of his life, there's only one set of footprints. And he says, "God, it's so not fair. During the most difficult parts of my life, you abandoned me. There's only one set of footprints." And God turns to him and says, "No, as a matter of fact, those footprints are mine. During those times, I was carrying you."
Mhm. Have you felt that you were carried by God before?
Constantly. Whenever we go through, we go through a lot of hard things in life, and somehow it always works out. And most times you look back, I mean, who else is it if not God running the show?
It seems like it's easier sometimes to see it and to feel good about it once it's over. Once the trial is over, then you look back and say, "Oh yeah, God was with me the whole time.
Hindsight is 2020.
God was actually carrying me. God led our children out of God led our forefathers out of Egypt." And a lot of times I think in the middle of it, it's a little harder to see that. Why do you think that is?
So 100%. Once when things are shaky, it's hard to believe. And that's, I think, part of the purpose of meditation or prayer, is to prepare yourself for those situations. Just like with children, it's very hard to tell a child to behave while they're having a tantrum. But if you can sit down with your children before that and say, "Listen, if you ever get mad, this is how you should react," then when something gets them mad, they already know how to react. So when we continuously teach ourselves to be faithful, to be people of faith, and to have belief in God and understand that God is constantly carrying us, then when these shaky times come, we feel more secure. But if we don't do the work beforehand, it's very hard it's very hard, and I would even say insensitive in the moment to tell someone, "Oh, where's your faith?" That's not our place. When someone goes through a shaky time, it's not our job now to start pushing faith at them. Now they need our shoulder to cry on. But beforehand, we come to classes, we come to sermons, and we learn about faith and the belief in God, and that God's constantly holding us, so that when we do go, if we, God forbid, ever do go through trialing times, we know how to go through that storm.
Very good. Well, I hope that people who are still watching the interview, which I hope everyone does, because I've been loving this great conversation. I'm glad to meet you. I hope that we can feel a little bit more prepared for those times, and that when they do come up, we can remember that God is with us. And I know that's what the holy days are also supposed to help us accomplish. I think kind of keep you prepared for the rest of the year.
100%.
So I want to say thank you once again to Douglas Property and Development Big John's Appliances and Stevenson, Wilcox and Associates for supporting Faith in Flagler, and Asher Farkash. This has been a great pleasure. I've learned so much from you and just talking for half an hour. Asher Farkash is the assistant rabbi and program director at the Chabad of Greater Daytona. What's a website where people can go and get more details of where to go and how to find it?
It's Chabad, which is spelled Chabad, Daytona.org.
ChabadDaytona.org.
Correct.
Sounds good. I'll put the link, with the posts. But thank you once again, and I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the holy days.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a pleasure.